both been through something.
Yes. I'm still here. How are you all feeling? When you first get this script, first of all, how heavy was it?
As in the actual script?
Yeah.
Really heavy. It was very heavy and very well written. It was from, the script didn't change from the moment Mona and Brady first wrote it through to the draft that we performed, which was 2 years later. Almost every word was identical, and from the moment of reading it, I just thought, this is excellent and so rare to read something so engaging, but not only engaging, just so incredibly, deliciously ambitious.
So when you're reading the script and you're seeing how long it is, that there's an intermission baked in, what makes you excited about that as a performer? Because as you said, that's something that's different.
Yeah, I think what was exciting was that I was sustained throughout the reading of the script and throughout the film. I think at the heart of it, there is an incredible love story that keeps you engaged throughout the whole film. I think in terms of playing Erzsébet, it was this, I thought it was intriguing, this idea that this character doesn't appear until halfway through the film, and that was quite a challenge in some ways. And then thinking more and more about it, I realized actually she is very much present in the beginning of the film. She is there in László, she informs so much of his journey in that first half. And there is almost something quite otherworldly about her. I always thought of her as slightly 2 feet above the ground. There's something almost, she's through her trauma, she's almost disassociated from her physical being. So not that it's as far as being supernatural, but there's a definite otherness about her that I found incredibly engaging.
And then when we do finally see you, after we come back and she's there, what's that like performing that when you finally get to be with everyone and you're there?
Well, I very much the idea is that the way that László is waiting, Brady wants the audience to be waiting in the same way, so that when these women arrive, you're really expecting and anticipating their arrival.
One of the things we were talking about backstage, I just wanted to make sure, I was like, you learned Hungarian for this, right? So can you talk about learning Hungarian for this? Because you sound so wonderful and so rich, and it really adds to our understanding of her.
Yeah, that was a huge part of the prep for Adrien and I, was to, for those dialogue scenes, was to sound not only genuinely Hungarian through the accent, but also through the language. But we were fortunate in having time. I think with a project like this, it was very, very difficult to get this film made. There were different iterations of cast, finance was difficult. Every struggle that you could encounter, this film encountered, so it was such an achievement to be actually making it. But that time that I had in knowing 2 years before we actually made it that I would be playing the part gave me that time to prepare the technical sides of the character as thoroughly as possible.
So you talked a little bit about Adrien. How did you have a rehearsal process? How did you bond together? Because as you said, you're sort of rooming over his life and we don't see you. And then when we do, it is so wrenching and exciting, and you see that with the two of you on screen.
Yeah, we didn't rehearse at all. Adrien and I had one conversation on Zoom with Brady together, and then the next time we saw each other, we were doing one of their love scenes, I think. So I knew, and I sensed from talking to Brady, that the takes were going to be very, very long. Obviously, it was shot on film and on VistaVision, so we couldn't waste anything. So I knew that when I got to set, I had to be thoroughly prepared and know exactly what I was doing. And it almost felt like when we were doing it, almost quite theatrical in some ways. It felt like it was the finished performance. But along that way, there was lots of dialogue and discussions with Brady about the details of the character, and so that I felt safe by the time I got to set. But I definitely felt like we had to know what we were doing when we arrived.
One of the things about Erzsébet I love is her emotional landscape is very sort of unexpected. She has a lot of trauma and she has a lot of resolve, and she's the strong one, I'd say. But there is such an incredible tenderness about her. How are you mapping her emotional landscape as you're filming the movie?
Well, her emotional progression is very much to her physical progression, and in some ways, as László is deteriorating, strangely, Erzsébet gets stronger and stronger. Throughout that second half, she, like a phoenix from the ashes, she kind of grows, and I knew that scene, that confrontation with Van Buren had to be her at the height of her powers, and you sense very early on that she intuits that this guy is trouble. From the moment she meets him, I think she has this almost sixth sense that this man is not a good man. And so it was tracking that dynamic to the point where she has to bring truth to corruption.
Can you talk about that scene? I mean, I was backstage and I was just hearing it again, and I still felt myself just like tightening up, because it's coming and you're so, in a weird way, you're excited about it, you're happy someone's finally saying this, but it's just a gut punch.
Yeah, I think there's an element of, there's something quite disturbing about that scene, because by the end of it you feel like in some ways she's been reduced to an animal again, which we know that has been her experience in the camps and where she's come from. So there's a horrific kind of tragedy in that scene at the same time that someone is asserting their dignity and their basic human rights.
Guy is so incredible in this film as well. What was it like seeing his progression as a character? Well, you're playing a character who susses him out in a way that no one else does.
Yeah, I think his character, he's such a sort of wolf in sheep's clothing. He is just a shapeshifter. You can't ever pin him down. He's constantly, he's like a magician in some ways. He's like, look over here, but the really terrible stuff is happening over here, which he obviously plays superbly.
One thing I love about Erzsébet is she also has career aspirations. I think when we talk about the film, we think a lot about László's American dream, but she comes and she has things that she wants to do and accomplish. What was exciting about that for you?
Well, I think very much it's finding the nuance of the character, and so much of this film is about dreaming and about aspiration and about vision, and so it was so key that she has her dreams and visions, and how do we build those visions and protect those dreams in circumstances that don't always want us to have dreams.
I don't know, I wonder if anyone here knows, did you guys know that the film was mostly filmed in Hungary?
Oh.
Pretty much all of it, apart from the scene in Italy when they go to Carrara. But everything else was filmed in Budapest, and just outside of Budapest.
So you mentioned it's filmed in VistaVision, and I would love if you explain to everyone what that actually looks like on set, because it's a crazy process, and obviously it turns out beautifully, but what does that look like, and how does that impact your performance?
Well, it's an enormous camera that is really noisy and incredibly distracting. So you're trying to do really intense emotional scenes, and you can just hear and then you know that every centimetre of film is costing an absolute fortune, so you really don't want to mess it up. So it comes with great pressure, but often in times of great pressure you can produce quite
then, the thing with the camera isn't it like it shoots this way and then you turn the film, or what? It's like it's filming the wrong way or something. Can you explain that? And I'm like, what is that?
I would love to be able to explain it, but I have to say I also would need some more education on that. But I think it's something to do with it. It's able to capture very wide shots, so you're able to get so much more in each shot.
When Brady told you that's how it was going to be shot, what are you thinking?
I just think it's such an incredible feat what was achieved, and actually on an extraordinarily modest budget. I mean, 10 million is nothing for a film of that scale. It's absolutely sort of incredible what he and Mona pulled off with such limited resources. And also to make a film like that in today's climate, where trying to do anything original is almost impossible, that it just shows you what you can achieve through sheer determination and passion and a desire to tell a truthful story.
When you're working with a filmmaker like Brady, who has such vision, and Mona is there also, and she is an incredible filmmaker in her own right, how does that impact how much you want to show up on the day?
It just felt like this film for Brady and Mona was incredibly personal, and in a very sort of animal, intuitive way, we as actors picked up on that. And so everything was done very carefully, and everyone wanted to bring, such a unique story and such a unique vision that we all took what we were doing incredibly seriously. And Brady and Mona create a very familial atmosphere and create something very special.
And Brady was like a very long time actor. He started as a child. What's the difference between being directed by a director who has done acting and one who hasn't?
I think there's a vulnerability, actually. I think there's a great vulnerability to actors generally, and I think Brady, as a director, you feel there's a very vulnerable side to him, and I think in that vulnerability there's a lot of honesty.
So you have a number of very seemingly demanding scenes. Can you think of one that was the most demanding for you, and how you approach it? I can think of a few just off the top of my head, but I'm curious for you, what comes to mind?
It was very much that confrontation at the end with Van Buren. That was the scene that I was charting constantly in my mind and preparing and in building the character to that point, not only physically, so you believe that she's got to a point of being incapacitated physically to being able to stand up and confront this table physically. So that scene, we just we didn't rehearse it at all. I believe we shot the first time we did it. We all knew what we were doing, and so Brady thought, let's just see what happens in that first take. And I think the take that you see is the first take that we actually did, where just by chance, her at the end when the shoe comes off, and that was completely just one of those moments that film can sometimes capture of something completely unplanned and unexpected, but somehow works mystically in the narrative that you're telling.
Are you someone who finds it easy to let go of a character? Like when you're finished with a scene like that, are you feeling, oh, or are you still, chugging along to the end, and then when it's over, do you still think about Erzsébet? Is one thing that I think about a lot.
Well, I actually found it was, I had a great wig for playing Erzsébet, and I have to say it was really useful because, it's intense stuff we were doing, but I was able to put on, metaphorically put on her and take her off through wearing this wig, and I think somehow that gave me a bit of distance from her, which I actually needed, because you know it is a fabricated and fictional story, but it is very much rooted in real history.
Like Brady, how does it impact the kind of choices you want to make afterwards? Like you were saying, this is so rare. It's such an accomplishment. We don't get enough of this anymore. How does this change how you want to maybe approach new roles?
Well, you just don't want to do anything else after. You just gotta go, well, I feel like I've really explored an extreme here. What do I do afterwards? But then, you know, you keep going and you find something else and try and do something different and keep building and keep changing and keep exploring.
I mean, I think you can sense that the response here is wonderful. The film premiered in Venice. It's been to a number of other film festivals. The response has been very strong. How does that make you feel as an artist? Like, you know, people do want this.
Well, I think it's just so hard for a story to work and a story to come together and a story to impact people. You know, how few films does that happen? So even in a small way, if it makes an impact on somebody and you go home and you think about it for a couple of days afterwards, then I feel that's an achievement.
So one thing I'm sure you know is that a number of our audience members and one of the volunteers are students. And so we always like to ask about advice that you might have for any students in the crowd. I'm sure there's many of you who are filmmakers or performers or just want to do something with film. Any advice you might have for them, advice that you maybe got before that you didn't think about at the time and now you look back on it and say, it was pretty good.
I think so much of it is determination and endurance and committing and not getting knocked down and just keep going and retain, you know, so much like the film, retaining that passion and ideology and whatever got you into it in the first place, trying to hang on to that no matter what the world or the industry throws at you.
Can you think of any advice someone gave you when you were younger that you didn't take and you wish you did?
Don't take yourself too seriously. It's probably the best advice. You know, take yourself seriously enough, but I guess also, I mean, as a student, you have such time. I mean, time is so precious, and to have that time to really explore and learn and use your brain, and it's so magical. You know, life very quickly becomes so I don't even know if that's a word, but systematized, that to have that time, that period of just exploration is very precious.
I think that's all we have time for. You guys have sat through many hours of